powerful wisdom there, right? And we backed down. And then all of a sudden, things started to take a more sinister turn. You had a government that started telling people, you know what, we don't care that you provide wonderful services for the sick and the elderly and the poor through your church. You're going to have to provide contraception and abortion coverage and insurance that people collect through your charitable organization. That's now before the Supreme Court. And people say, well, that's an intrusion on my First Amendment liberties. There are 5 liberties, of course, within the First Amendment, one of those being freedom of religion. Not freedom of worship, as the president calls it. It's freedom of religion. That's a little bit of sleight of hand, verbal sleight of hand on his part when he does that. And then we started hearing people say, well, you know, if you're a cake baker and you don't want to bake a cake for Johnny and Jimmy's wedding, you're going to have to pay a big fine and maybe even go to jail and we'll put you out of business. Even though you may not approve of Johnny and Jimmy's wedding, you may not have anything against them at all, and they may be able to go to another cake baker, but instead, now they have moved on to try to muscle people who do not approve of what they do, and now they need you to approve. They need you to take part. As I said the other day on the air, it has become bring them out so we may know them. And we have crossed a line into a very dangerous area here. And yes, the culture wars continue. And the latest battlefront is this notion that a man who thinks he's a woman, or vice versa, can go use somebody else's restroom because I identify this way. Look, we've brought it up before. Rachel Dolezal, she identified as a black person, even though she wasn't one. And oddly enough, other black people were enraged when they discovered that she was white. And yet, on the other hand, we're told, yeah, well, that's wrong because, you know, But on the other hand, if you were born Johnny and you think you're Jenny, we shouldn't interfere with that. And now you've got people who think they're dragons and people who think they're kitty cats. And as I joked yesterday, I'm a school bus. And I need to be treated as a school bus. And instead of using the bathroom, I need to be parked in the maintenance shop at night, and I can urinate there all over the floor. And we'll just call it that. And you can't tell me no because I'm a school bus. Get it? And if I think I am, who are you to tell me otherwise? Well, we had Georgia that passed a bill, and then Georgia had to back down on all of this. Indiana backed down last year. Well, the governor backed down. The legislature didn't. North Carolina passed a bill saying, nope, you know what? We're going to protect the little girls in restrooms and locker rooms. You're not coming in if you are genetically a man. And now the governor has partially backed down. All you need to do is threaten some of these political heavyweights. That's meant to be sarcastic. Threaten them a little bit with a boycott or a loss of a business or a few hundred jobs, and all of a sudden they're willing to throw in the towel. There's a partial surrender in North Carolina. Mississippi has gone ahead and done this, and Mississippi culturally I don't think will be bullied. I think there's a history there that's just not going to happen here. And now Tennessee. Tennessee is getting on the bandwagon saying no. Some 35-year-old man with a lot of stubble on his face is not going to come in to a little girl's locker room or a bathroom and share that. You've got some very angry people, though, on the American left that these states are all standing up and doing this, and they keep claiming, oh, this is no different than the civil rights era when you were so mean to people who were black. As if somehow, see, people are born black, you don't have any choice about it. On the other hand, if you're born a man, you don't necessarily have to put on a dress and go use a girl's restroom. That's more of a choice. And the argument, no, it's not my choice, this is the way God made me. Sorry, stop blaming God, number one. And number two, when you make these claims, I think a lot of you don't actually believe in God. You just figure you're trying to throw that back at people who do. This is a fellow by the name of Chad Griffin. He's with something strangely named the Human Rights Commission, and he's in Tennessee, and he's angry.
This is not new. Just look at the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. The opponents of integration, the opponents of the Civil Rights Act, what did they do? They tried to attack these laws at the local level, at the state level. They even used similar language.
But yes, Mr. Griffin, or whatever your name is, how do you explain a guy who might use this as cover to go in and molest little girls? You already had a fellow a few weeks ago in Seattle because they've decided they're going to have these non-denominational restrooms. You already had a man, and he went in and undressed twice in a restroom, locker room, by a pool, swimming pool, where little girls were actually having swimming lessons. He did it twice in one day. Why? Because he got his jollies off doing it. And then you had some liberal woman who'd scream bloody murder if anyone looked at her cross-eyed or told her to get back in the kitchen. or picked on Megyn Kelly, she'd be screaming bloody murder. She said, well, we're just going to have to live with this. In other words, if your little girl gets raped, well, that's just, collateral damage for the left. 912, Bill Colley with you. And in Missouri, we've got this. Missouri attempts to send religious liberty bill straight to the people. Unlike other states, the Daily Signal reports, where the fate of the legislation was left to the governor, in Missouri, legislators want the people to decide. Supporters say if it's called SJR 39 were to take effect, it would ban government discrimination against people of faith because of their beliefs about marriage, schools, and charities, for example, would be protected from losing access to government programs because of their beliefs about marriage. Now, we're tying these two laws together. Number one, the bathroom bills run counter to anybody with traditional values, and being forced to comply in a same-sex wedding through your business is also running counter to that. So I tie the two things together. And then I have this from the Daily Signal. If you're looking for some culprits who are siding with the folks who are trying to destroy American tradition, there's a list of companies and big businesses who are now trying to intimidate Missouri legislators. You may know some of the names. Commerce Bank, Dow, Edward Jones, Express Scripts, Google Fiber, Marriott, MasterCard, Monsanto, Nestle Purina, Pfizer, Salesforce, and Washington University in St. Louis. So you've got all of these big, muscular corporate thugs who are now in there trying to change the way governments operate and saying, oh, well, this would be mean-spirited. We've got to start identifying who these companies are. Because if nothing else, if they're trying to push around the faithful and they're trying to, reduce our common sense, and we talked about the hypocrisy of many of these companies that are involved in all of this. It's 9:14. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You can reach our program by dialing 736-0300. The Christian Post has this. And they're talking about Ryan Anderson, who was also writing the other day at Daily Signal. And the Christian Post says he was explaining that the first hypocrisy is the fact that liberals don't like big money and big business unless they support the left. So all of a sudden, big business is good if big business joins in the movement to force Christians to bake the cakes, take the pictures, or send grown men into little girls' lavatories. The second hypocrisy, the writer said, was liberal rock stars who in their good conscience refuse to perform in states that have passed a law that effectively gives others the ability to act in accordance with their consciences without the fear of government backlash. Did you know that this Bryan Adams, the washed-up Canadian singer who said he would not be performing in North Carolina as a way to punish them for their decision, just recently did a concert in Egypt? What do you think the punishment would be in Egypt if you were walking down the street and you suddenly said, hey, I was born Muhammad, but now I'm Fatima, and you were suddenly wearing a woman's burqa? What do you think they would do to you in Egypt? What do you think they'd do to homosexuals in Egypt? Do you have any idea how these countries in that part of the world operate? I think we already know that. So Bryan Adams says North Carolina is bad. He will not perform there because everyone wants to come out and watch this old geezer perform his hits from 35 years ago. He will not perform in North Carolina because of the new law saying that 35-year-old men shall not use the bathrooms. And it's not even statewide. Private businesses can make their own decisions. So if a private business wants your little girl molested in the bathroom, the private business can go ahead and make the decision to allow that to happen. But this guy went to Egypt and he performed in a country where they would chop a person's head off for that type of behavior. And lastly, the writer said that in PayPal's statement about North Carolina, where they were going to pull out 400 jobs, remember, they do business in Singapore, where homosexuality can also get you killed. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX.
Hey, Bill, now Ringo Starr says he's not going to perform there, and Jimmy Buffett says he's going to perform there, but it's a stupid law.
Jimmy Buffett's had one hit in his entire life 40-some years ago. Ringo Starr hasn't had a hit since his time with the Beatles nearly 50 years ago.
Right. Okay, thanks, Bill.
I don't know how I can live without that. 9:17, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. And then the NFL getting involved. Excuse me, but I watch a lot of football. I'm not going to be making an excuse about that. I watch a lot of football. Love playing the game. Love watching it. Doesn't matter what level it's at. But I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of cross-dressers likely aren't interested in football. There may be a handful, but there are so few cross-dressers. I've never been to a stadium, and I've been to several pro football games, and I've been to a lot of Major League Baseball games, been to see minor league baseball games, been to National Hockey League games, and I've never seen a cross-dresser yet in one of these instances. You're up next. You're on the air.
I don't understand how these guys keep winning in a court when the lawyers aren't they saying that you can't take away one person's rights to give it to another person's rights? And there's only one way to beat this. We have to stoop to their level. And I don't know if I'm willing to do that. I don't know if I'm willing to drag myself into the gutter and just be, a total, I don't know, it's just not right. In everything that they're doing is hypocrisy, and it's been brought up over and over and over. Glenn Beck brings it up all the time. Sean Hannity just rails on these people all the time about how they sit and scream about the stuff here, but they do things overseas where it's just twice as bad, and they don't say nothing about it. It's just the same thing as the cakes. The Christian guys get drug into court, shut down, fined, everything else, but the Muslim places, not one
I'll
word.
tell you, the Hindus likely wouldn't engage in doing that. Even the Buddhists wouldn't engage in doing that. The Taoists wouldn't engage in doing that. A lot of your very strict Jews wouldn't engage in doing that. This is all about trying to destroy the basic major faith of this country, which is part of our cultural fiber.
Right, and see, here's the deal. They don't believe in God. They don't have a moral code. So they can drag themselves into the gutter and live with themselves. If I did that, I don't know if I could live with myself and look and talk to my maker and look him in the face.
Well, I thank you much for the call. I think that there's probably a major backlash coming in this country. It's a sad, sad thing to say this, and it's certainly not a recommendation on my part. But the first time some 3-year-old girl gets molested in one of these bathrooms by some 35-year-old thug, some parent may decide to take matters into his or her own hands. And then, of course, the folks of the alternative lifestyle will then have them trying to clean that up. Will then have their martyr. Hey, more of your telephone calls on the way in just a few minutes. I'll mention that telephone number again, 736-0300. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Have you checked out yet dreamroomdesign.com? We've been telling you about Dream Room Design for a few months on the program now, and since we'll have some temperatures next week that look like we'll hit 80. And you can have a sunroom, and of course you can enjoy it in December and January. That's not the issue. But what we'd like you to do is perhaps consider Dream Room Design to build you one of those beautiful rooms that they do custom work with. They can actually build you something just fresh, or they can build it over your existing porch, patio, or your deck. They can use a combination of metal and windows, or all glass, in fact, if you'd like that, you prefer that. But it's one way, even in the hot weather, to protect you from some of the elements, the blowing sand that we get around this area, and also the insects. So we'd highly recommend checking out dreamroomdesign.com. That's the website. You can see some testimonials there from many satisfied customers, as well as some of the great work that they've done. That's Dream Room Design. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
I find it ironic that your guys are calling for all this and all that. Yeah, I do find that you Christians also make like discrimination. For example,
so you're okay with little girls being molested in toilets?
No. Let me explain, okay?
Don't put
words in my mouth, okay? If I call your station 2 days, your station 1 day, 2 times, oh, no, I'm not finding your country next up because you called me twice. Oh, no, but little Kyle, the guy that agrees with me, loves my flatulent smell. Oh, you can call on everything. What kind of discrimination is that?
I don't call you at all. You call me. Gee, you ever seen the Monty Python sketch where the guy goes to the argument clinic and he walks into the room where he gets abused, and it's the abuse room. That's where you're going to get abuse. So if you feel if you're not being heard, you know what? I think I'm going to call up the radio show again today. But I don't even know that guy's telephone number. Again, I've never called him in my life. So what's his beef? Um, Go get a show of your own. I'm sure it will be very, very successful here in the Magic Valley, and likely people will just flock to it, because all of the liberals in the entire Magic Valley were in that room that night that Bernie Sanders won the caucus. There were fewer than 1,000 of them. Now, if you have close to 100,000 people in the county, I think that tells you right away. Uh, there's a reason you're out there all the way on the edge and in the cold. Get away from the ledge. It's about 500 feet down there to the bottom of the canyon. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX.
Yeah, there's that big word discrimination again. They went to college to learn that word. They're the ones that's discriminated against us. Like you said, going into little girls' bathrooms.
I don't. Thank you for the call. I don't have any objection. This is the United States of America, and choice is liberty. And if you choose to walk around in a dress and you're a man, or you feel that you are actually born into a woman's body and you want to make some changes to your pipes, I guess that's your own choice. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but no one's going to stop you. That people are allowed to go ahead and do that. People are allowed to engage in same-sex relationships. Courts have said it's okay because there's nothing in the Constitution that prohibit it. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think that the Founding Fathers gave it much thought, and I don't think they cared about it, to be honest with you. Because they were just looking to say, hey, I want government out of my life. That's fine. But they also said, and it's been reiterated many, many times, your right to your free expression ends at the tip of my nose. And there will be people who take advantage of said laws who will decide that they are going to go in and use these facilities because they can prey on the innocent. And I'm not just talking about 3-year-old girls. I realize that might be the one thing that people can understand the best. It's the most graphic. But I'm worried about the 30-year-old girls and the 70-year-old girls and the 90-year-old girls. And I'm telling you, we are opening a Pandora's box. Those people need to be protected as well. And I'm sorry if it hurts the feelings of some big thug or lug who's 45 years old and 300 pounds of muscle and wearing a skirt, and he feels he's got to go into the room. I'm terribly sorry about that, but I'm going to err on the side of the women who might be 95 pounds soaking wet and don't have any defense in that situation. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on KLIX.
Yeah, good morning. Hey, I don't care what kind of laws are on the books. I have some little girls, and if they come out of the women's bathroom and tell me there's some guy in there hiking his skirt, he's not going to like his life the next few minutes.
Thank you for the call. I was just mentioning that a few minutes ago. No one's recommending it, but these things will happen. There are people out there who will stand up for their children, and they are willing to go to great lengths to stand up for their children's safety. If they're willing to die for it, then they're likely willing to see someone else die, and that's what worries me about all of this, because the left is just hoping that happens, so then they can say, here's our martyr. You cannot make fun of us any longer. They're just looking for an opportunity to have a Matthew Shepard of the LGBT crowd who went into one of these bathrooms, and then they can claim, well, it's just bigotry that's responsible for it. 9:30, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 46. Hey, I've got half an hour of the program left. Got to share with you before we close today. A bit of a spat between Megyn Kelly and the Reverend Al Sharpton. You'll enjoy listening to it.